Just east of Phoenix, Arizona, the Superstition Mountains are the setting for one of the most provocative and famous legends in American history. With betrayal, murder, and unimaginable bounties of gold, this is the Lost Dutchman Mine. The story begins way back in 1540 with Francesco Vasquez Coronado. Upon hearing of gold in the Superstition Mountains, Coronado brought his band of conquistadors and settled in a nearby village. The Apache considered the Superstition Mountains sacred land, and they even called it the Devil's Playground. They warned Coronado and his conquistadors not to search there. Of course, they did anyway, and many of them ended up dead. And this leads to many clashes between Coronado and the Apache. On July 7th, 1540, Coronado and his conquistadors arrived in Hiwaku, which is a village that is now known as Gallup, New Mexico. And they took over the village, and a lot of native Apache died. They killed a lot of them, and they basically just overran the village and took it over themselves. Over the next few years, Coronado and his men ransacked the village, and they ran expeditions up into the Superstition Mountains looking for the gold, looking for the silver, and they never found it. So native Apache that they named the Turk came up to them with tales of gold and riches and possibly the cities of Cibola to the north. The Turk ended up leading Coronado and some of his men up into what is now Kansas, up to Quivira, which is now modern-day Salina, Kansas. And it was at this point that Coronado realized that he was being led on a wild goose chase. The Turk admitted it. Coronado had the Turk executed, and they ended up going back to Mexico. Coronado died in 1554 at the age of 42 without ever finding any gold or any silver. So next in this story is the Peralta family. The Peralta family was a family from Mexico that owned land and lived in California. In 1748, Don Miguel Peralta was granted the Superstition Mountains, and they started running expeditions there, and they found the mines, and they would excavate gold and silver. They would take this out. People saw them with it. They knew that they were taking it, and the Apache weren't happy. But they continued to do it regardless of the Apache over the course of many, many years. And then in 1847, the Apache and the Peralta family knew that the Apache were fed up with it, and they were going to go to war with them. But Pedro Peralta decided that he wanted to go one last time and get as much gold, as much silver as they could, and take it out before the Apache could do anything. He didn't make it. They ended up going into the Superstition Mountains. They went to the mine, they excavated gold, they got the silver, and on their way out, the Apache attacked. The Apache killed everyone in the group except for one lone survivor left to tell the tale. The tale that the one lone survivor told was that the Apache attacked, killed everyone in the group, and the burros with the satchels hanging over ran off and spilling out gold all across the countryside, all across the mountainside. Now what lends this credence is in the 1850s, prospectors went up into the mountains and actually found bones from the burros and the satchels, and $37,000 worth of gold in the satchels. So this kind of proves that this story is true, I guess, that this actually happened, that you know, the burros ran across, they had gold in the satchels, and these prospectors ended up finding it. They didn't, however, find the mine. All right, now we have kind of an intermediate story that's just kind of this strange story that's thrown in there, and it's Dr. Thorne's story. So Dr. Thorne supposedly treated an Apache chieftain, and for his reward, for treating him, the Apache blindfolded Dr. Thorne, took him up into the Superstition Mountains, and let him grab as much gold, as much silver as he possibly could hold, and then blindfolded him again, took him back to his house, and he got to keep all of the gold. So this was in 1854, and Dr. Thorne told a different story. He said that he was taken captive by the Apache, and while he was in the Superstition Mountains, he came across the mine and stole some gold and silver, and then went back and lived out the rest of his days once they released him. Of course, he's told the stories, he told people how to get to the mine, and no one ever found it, no one knew how to get there. So nobody knows if this story is really true, but it's a fun story just to throw in there, just part of the lore of the Lost Dutchman Mine. Alright, another interesting story that we have here is the Peralta stones. So the Peralta family supposedly created these stones that were a map to get back to the mine. And these stones are now on display in Arizona at the Arizona Natural History Museum. And you can go there, you can see them. There's a picture of them right here, I'm showing them to you. Once you put these stones together, it kind of makes this line, this road, and there's, you know, just these different features, and it supposedly shows you where the mine is if you know how to read it. Nobody knows if these stones are actually real. They do actually coincide with how maps were kind of drawn at the time, but nobody knows if they're real, and nobody knows how to read them. And even if you do, there are people now that are trying to decipher these, and they go out into the Superstition Mountains and that are trying to figure out, based on these stones, where things are. People think that they have found markers. There's actually a series on the History Channel right now where people are following these stones and finding these markers. It's a lot of entertainment. I don't know. I don't think they're actually going to find anything, but we'll see. And after all of that, finally we are to the Dutchman. Lost Dutchman's Mine. So the Dutchman is Jacob Waltz. He's German. He came to America in 1839, and he lived in the Arizona Territory from 1863, let me check that, to 1891. So there's a lot that's unknown about Jacob Waltz. What is known, or at least historically what has been told, is that he would trek into the Superstition Mountains and he would come back and he would have gold. And so people knew there that he had a mine, that he had found a mine, and he would go up there. Nobody knew where it was, but he would come back with gold, and he was rich. So one of the legends is that he had an Apache mistress that showed him where it was, and they were in love. They had this hidden love, and she took him up into the mountains and showed him where it was. The Apache found out about it, that she had shown him where the mine was, and they had her killed. Nobody knows if any of that's true, but what we do know is that Jacob Waltz died of pneumonia on October 25th, 1891. So the Apache didn't get to him, so he supposedly died at this woman's house, and she went on to try and find the mine based on what he told her, and she never found it, but then started selling fake maps to get to the mine for like $7 a piece, and that's kind of how that story just fizzles out. So Jacob Waltz, the Lost Dutchman, is kind of this story that's in there that's really not that interesting, but that kind of brought the Lost Dutchman Mine to life, and people have been looking for it since. And one of the biggest figures that ever looked for it, one of the biggest stories, is a man called Adolph Ruth. So Adolph Ruth supposedly acquired a map from his son that is now known as the Peralta Ruth map, and it was a Peralta map that his son found and gave to him, and they were both prospectors, and they were always hunting for buried treasure, and that's how he acquired this map. And he went up into the Superstition Mountains and was caught and was killed by the Apache. Okay, now there's a lot of legends about his death because they found his bones shortly thereafter, And his head was in one place, and his body was in another place. Now, the coroner did an autopsy and discovered that he had died of natural causes and that his body and his head had been separated by animals after death. However, there were pictures of this, and there's a hole in his skull, and many people believe that because of that he was shot in the head. Now, one of the articles that I read about this actually said that he was shot in the head with a high-powered rifle at close range. Okay, if you want to find these treasures, if you're genuinely looking for these things, then you want the truth, right? So when you hear things like that, where there's no evidence that he was shot at all, and then there's something like he was shot at close range with a high-powered rifle, don't follow those leads, right? Everything that I'm saying here, I'm getting from all of these different sources, and they may not be true, but at least I'm trying to filter out some of that garbage, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that's just not going to be true, and just, you know, if you genuinely want to find something, you have to follow true, at least what you perceive to be, you know, factual evidence in order to find it. So if you go on wild goose chases with people that are just making things up, you're never going to get there. At least that's how I try and do it. That's how I try and follow this. So I try and filter out all of the stuff, you know, that doesn't really make sense, and just present, you know, things that at least are believed to have been true. So in conclusion, many people now are still looking for this. They go into the Superstition Mountains all the time looking for the Lost Dutchman Mine. It's a fantastic story. So it's great with all of the different things. This has been going on since the 1500s, and people have been looking for it. So this is just a great story. Like I said, right now there's a series on the History Channel where people are down there looking for it, and they even run into people that are in the mountains that are also searching for it. So there are tons of people out there, and there's tons of great stuff on the web. You can go down to Arizona, and they have stuff in museums. So it's a really fun story, and would be great to go down to Arizona, I think, and actually go look for it. Superstition Mountains look really cool too. So anyway, if you like it, and if you like the video, like, subscribe, leave comments. Thanks for watching.